Hey, everybody. Flowing in here. Hey, everyone.
Oh, hi. Hi, Gabriel. Hi, Kent.
Hello.
The old crowd. Oh, there are like eight people total. The old crowd on video, I should say.
That's right.
Hi, everybody else who's not on video.
We get a lot more on the
Hi, Caroline.
now.
I know I'm always fooled by thinking there's like nobody here, and then I look at the participants and I'm like,
is that your cat?
oh my gosh, that's Jasper. He's huge.
That's amazing.
He used to turn around. He's a rag doll. So he's so big. He's like,
I love that that's his spot.
oh my God, he thinks everything is his spot. He's like this.
I always thought that was a Zoom background. I didn't even know that was a real kitchen.
Yeah, I mean, if Jeff's gonna be walking around, then I'll put my like Bryce Canyon, something behind me, but I don't know. Otherwise, no, there he is. I never really think about it. I kind of just turn on my kitchen. I work standing up. I have a back injury, so I don't sit. So my this is all like this kitchen is ridiculously large. So I just have it set up, like here I am on one side of it with all my computer stuff. Sorry, now the whole world. Okay, now 11 people know this about me.
We'll let everybody come in, and then when Michele gets here, we will get started.
Ooh, more people. It's so cool to see more people's faces. Hi, everybody. Just like looking at all the faces. I mean, I know you're all on mute, it looks like. Then we have Kent, we have to do something. I know we say this a lot to you, but I'll just say, because I'd like to tell it again, like we have to do something where we all as founders can connect.
I know.
Like desperate for that.
We actually have some exciting.
So really think it's great.
We actually just we've been hiring a lot. So that's why we've been pretty busy and trying to get more people on to help. All of you awesome folks. And one of the people coming on is going to be tackling that as like one of her first things too. So you might have met Lee. I don't know if any of you have met Lee yet, but she's going to be doing I think we decided at the last town hall we're going to do a Facebook group. And then we're going to do some kind of socials and things like that we'll throw in there. We'll throw in there as well. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
I think it would be great because I know that there are things I can learn from other people, like everybody here, right? And I know that there are things that I'm doing right now. And I've mentioned to Oliver, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just researched X and I really want to let everybody know. So if they are interested in X, I've got like information I want to share, and then I want to learn. So anyway, 100%. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, we've and I think we heard your feedback from the last town hall that like we might one day we might start building more and more of those features socially into the application, but for now it would just be like one more thing to check. So we're gonna probably do it in Facebook groups to start, and then we'll go from there. So
I think
I see we all have Facebook joined. There she is. Guest of the hour. Awesome.
How are you?
Michele, how are you?
Good. I'm good. How are you?
Great. We're just gonna give
my bed is actually made. It's just the corner of it doesn't look that good. Anyway, I just opened my door.
All good.
This is like work from home life. If there's 2 people on Zoom calls, it's just so loud.
Awesome. Well, we only have Michele for a short time here, so we'll get started, and then as other people pile in, we can always watch the recording afterwards. So Michele, thank you so much for taking the time here. I don't think Michele needs much of an introduction, but I'll do my best one here. So Michele's the president and co-founder of now Clearco, and before that, gosh, Michele has had everything from a caviar business to selling a business to Groupon, and of course she is the star on Dragon's Den, which is actually one of the OG pitcher startup shows to a bunch of folks, and you guys might know it as Shark Tank in the US. And luckily we get to work with her every day. And I think what a lot of people don't
I
realize.
don't know if that's good or bad, Ken. Sometimes I'm a little crazy to work with, but.
No, but what a lot of people don't know about Michele is that she's actually very, like, she's in there. Like she's an operator, and she's really one of the best that I've had the privilege to work with. And when you see her stuff on social, it's like it's coming from her. It's her stuff. So that's why I'm excited to get her answers to these questions. Michele, anything you want to say before I start peppering you with these great questions we got from the ClearAngel team?
No, I mean, first of all, it's amazing to meet all of you. I have to give you the funny story about the ClearAngel product. So ClearAngel was not a figment of my imagination. It was a figment of Andrew's. And he said, look, we've said no to 50,000 companies because they weren't big enough along the way. Let me see if I can build a product for early stage companies. And honestly, I was like, you're fucking nuts. Like, that's not going to work. We have no data. We have no ability to do this. We're going to this was the project that almost died a few times. Kent can tell you. Kent has been completely tireless and is also one of truly the best operators and executors. I mean, if you want to understand growth, getting inside Kent's brain is kind of the fastest way to really understand that. And I'm just so glad you guys are part of the initial cohorts. I know the product is probably not perfect. It's probably a work in progress. We appreciate you being very, very patient with us, but are very, very excited about the businesses that you're building. And if we can be, a huge form of support, we're really on that mission to win it. And so I think this was the product that definitely almost didn't exist. It almost died a bunch of times along the way. And it's just, it was really Kent and Andrew that made this a possibility. So why don't we get started with questions? As most of you are meeting me for the first time, but I'm a very open book. So you can ask me anything, whether it's personal or about business. And I largely talk about a lot of different things. So totally open to what the questions are.
So why don't we do this all? So I'm going to start going through some of the ones from the document that you guys put together, and then if there's sort of follow-ons or if there's other things live, just toss them in the chat. We won't sort of do a full kind of audio free-for-all yet. We can save that for the end if anyone is sort of around there at the end. So Michele, I think we actually got a lot of questions about this. Really simple question, but I think it'd be good to hear from you. Why rebrand from Clearbank to Clearco? Why did we make that switch, and why did we do it now?
Yeah, so Clearbank just somehow means capital to people. And one of our big goals last year, we launched 4 new products last year. So we basically started with capital for ads. We launched an inventory product where we can buy your inventory for you. You don't have to pay us until it sells off your website. So that was one of our first product launches. The other one was Angel that we launched last year. We got to talk about it this year, but it really went live last year. We started wanting to build all of the tools and software and product around how to make founders successful. And so Clearbank was, when people thought about it, they thought about, I come to Clearbank for money. And we wanted them to think of coming for Clearbank for more than capital, for the ability to see what you should be doing next, to the ability to see how you benchmark compared to your peers, to basically be more of an automated VC versus, what exists today, which is a lot of human to human interaction where I don't know, your VC doesn't even know how you compare with other companies in their portfolios on a lot of specific things. And so we're could we use this massive advantage? And so one of our big product launches last year was valuation that Kent also worked on. And it was this idea that as a founder, it's so hard to understand what your business is worth because it's kind of tightly held secrets where VCs can tell you, but you don't really widely have that information. And so if you connect the apps that run your business, we can tell you, look, your business is probably worth between $5.2 and $5.5 million. If it was valued in this way, this is what you should be working on to improve. And so as we were expanding into all these non-capital products, that's why we changed the name from Clearco, from Clearbank to Clearco. I'm still getting used to it as well.
I know. Yeah, we do it all the time. No, I just wanted to get that out because we do get it a lot, and you'll start to see the Angel product take on more and more of the Clearco branding as time goes on. So look, I think this is always when Andrew was on, this was the most voted question there too. So clearly it strikes a nerve. Like what's the biggest mistake you see founders make when they're just getting started? And yeah, like how do you, what's that failure pattern that you see either in the investments that you've made in your own world? Like if you had to just boil it down, is there one thing you can say, oh my God, if you only just don't do this?
Yeah, of course. I don't know why my phone is ringing. Okay, number one thing that you guys have all avoided is the biggest mistakes that early stage founders actually have is that they don't start. And they think about an idea. The amount of people that come on Dragon's Den, they're like, I've had this great idea for 10 years. I'm like, what on earth have you been doing for 10 years? Like the world has changed. Like your iPhone didn't barely work 10 years ago. Like, how could you be thinking? Like, you got to go and you got to execute. And so getting out of planning mode into execution mode is the number one mistake I see. I see a lot of people spend a lot of time researching, trying to understand their market, trying to ask their friends and family if they want a product. None of that stuff at the end of the day really matters. What matters is that you've tested something with a large audience size and you're seeing if the market likes what, and the market is not your mom. It's not people that have a vested interest in you succeeding. And so people spend way too much time, I don't know, trying to do early stage, whatever it happens to be, but it doesn't do that. That's the first thing. Second mistake that I see founders make, and this actually gave us a lot of ideas for Clearbank, is that I don't see founders testing ads and really testing their capacity on those ads early enough. So what people will do is like, they'll look at ad spend, especially in an e-commerce business, and be like, oh, this is like wasted, right? Or it's like, I can't, like they don't kind of understand that this is what drives your acquisition channel. So they'll be like, well, I might lose $500, or I might lose $1,000. It's like, no, you have to get eyeballs to sell your product. So this is the cost of those eyeballs. And so honestly, with all the Dragon's Den companies, the very first thing I did with them is, most of them were spending $2,000 or $3,000 on marketing a month, like at the stage that I was investing. And the first thing we would do is we'd spend 10 grand the next month and 25 grand the second month. And we would, because what I was saying is, I'm like, do you want to understand if your unit economics break today? Or do you want to waste 2 years of your life and understand that same thing in 2 years from now? Because that seems like a big waste of time to not be understanding. And obviously, like, you need to be able to have inventory. Like, it's not, I'm simplifying it a little bit more. Like, I do understand that there's nuances and you can't just like go to Facebook and type in a new number. But that is really, that would be the thing, is like you're testing your business for scale all the time. As soon as you've negotiated with your suppliers, as soon as your unit economics are making sense, you want to test to see if you can scale quicker. I think that's the next thing. And then maybe I'll give you three. My third thing that I see, and this is founders across every phase of every network, and this is the thing that they don't write about in a lot of business books because it's really hard, is that you have to be continuously realigning and reorging and getting the right people on your team. And to be more explicit, that means you have to fire your friends when they are not performing. And that is the hardest job, because people don't talk about that. I mean, you read Billionaire Coach or whatever, and he talks about trust and love and all of them important. All of those things are important. You're not going to get very far if you're not a good person, right? But companies are built on performance, and people have to be like, I think I heard this great line, which is like, for me to just maintain my job next year, I have to be 40% better at my job to just maintain it if we're a growth company. And so that's really hard, because that means you will have friends that help you along the way, and then they don't want to work that hard, or they don't want the adventure, or they're just not strong enough. And it is a complete part of doing that. Clearbank has gone through tons of growing pains where we lost, early stage employees. And even at this stage, we're losing some of our original OGs, and people are transitioning into different roles. And people are like, I'm not ready to work at a $2 billion, 300-person company. Right. That's very, very different. And it's very real. It's extremely emotionally draining. There's ways to do it better, but there's no painkiller where it like goes away and you don't feel it. You always feel it. That's maybe the best way to describe it.
No, it's so true. And you're right. People don't talk about that much. You always hear you always hear like oh yeah, we started this with our friends, and you don't realize that along the way, there's a lot of that. Yeah, that's a really, there's kind of a follow-up question, or it kind of goes on with that, where, so someone's asking about, basically they're in a situation where they've got one kind of like, looks like two co-founders. One co-founder is sort of not full-time. The other one is full-time, one is not full-time.
Yep.
And the question is really like, how do we, how do you take that plunge when you don't necessarily have that capital to pay yourself? And I think this is one of, I'd love you to channel your, I'm curious what you say to this, because I think I know what you're going to say around what do you do when you have someone who's like, can't fully come in and commit? Is there room for people who can be still doing their day job and contributing? Do you look for, do you have to see that everybody is kind of fully committed, burn the boats behind you? Like, how do you see that?
So, and sorry, was this like a couple as well, or was this is just two co-founders?
Ooh, good question. If anyone asked it who wants to clarify, you can throw it in if you want. It doesn't look like they're a couple. Oh,
We are a couple.
oh,
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so yeah, it's just it's interesting. Yeah, because so here's what I would say. Look, I was in this scenario when we actually started Bytopia. So we worked on this caviar business. It didn't do well when I was right out of school. I was crazy enough to start a business right out of undergrad, and I was crazy enough to start a business right out of undergrad. And then we started working on this Bytopia business model, which was my first e-commerce website. And I remember that we started working on this, and I had like actually a really good job at Sears. I was like a director of strategy at the age of like 22. I was so young. It was a very long story on how I even got hired into this role, but like I was getting paid really well. I had like a lot of like, I knew I wasn't gonna stay there forever, but I knew I could really like kind of beef up my resume. And so when we started the company, I would go to work I'd wake up at 8, I'd go to work from 8 o'clock basically to 8 p.m. And then from 8 o'clock to like midnight every night, we would just work on Bytopia. And we had this, like my entire condo became a war room of like, there was literally like flipboard paper on every single window. And then I didn't realize my whole life would be like that. But anyway, so what happened is here's the thing, you have to kind of, if both of you quit and like you're super worried about like how you're going to make ends meet, that's probably going to be like too much stress to like make you guys productive. But you do need a really clear plan, because there's no way to do things like half feet in, half out. So we basically started working on Bytopia in November, and by February 1st, I had fully quit. And I remember like Anatoly was yelling at me. He's like, "You're either going to do this or you're not, Michelle. Like you have to quit your job." And it was like the best move I ever made. But also like our first month, we made like $10,000 or $20,000 in sales. Like we were able to like ratchet up where I kind of like, even if things didn't go quite well, and I didn't have a big safety net at that time, maybe I had like $10,000 in my bank account. Like I really didn't, it wasn't like I had a lot to go on. The biggest thing is to like make timelines, to be like, okay, we're going to hit this revenue target, and then you're going to leave your job, and then this is what's going to happen. Because someone can be certainly very useful if they have a full-time job. There's certainly help, but they can't be like a full co-founder. And I think the wear and tear of like, you're all in and they're not all in, it becomes really hard.
That's interesting. It's like you can almost set like you could set a benchmark or set a goal and basically say, hey, if you've got, once we get to this point, then, hey, now let's agree, once we have this much saved up, or once we hit this revenue milestone, you're going to quit your job. We've made this decision in advance. Yeah, that's really good advice. Monique, did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you so much.
So here's an interesting one, and one that we talked a lot about last year. So we have a question here around, 2020, a crazy year, obviously switching to really short-term survival mode. Now 2021, opening up the roadmap again, thinking about the future, but still feeling uncertain about everything up in the air with COVID and the pandemic. How are you advising, your companies now, where you had to basically really focus on survival, and now you're kind of coming out of hibernation, looking at the world the way it was before the pandemic? What's your best advice for balancing that? Like, do you go full 5-year vision, or do you still have to be building more of those survival instincts in case this isn't going to go away as fast as we think it is?
Oh, I mean, look, I think first of all of you should feel really lucky because you're in e-commerce. Like we are not dealing with just this, like, I mean, like I know people that own restaurants and their whole lives like are literally up in limbo. They're like, do I move to Greece? Do I like stay here? Do I like, what do I do with this property? I own like all this money I invested. Like it is such a privilege to be in a space that's growing where consumer habits are growing and changing. And I think so the first thing is like changing your perspective, because I know COVID's really hard for like a zillion different reasons, but that's kind of the first thing. You know, I'm probably like, I think that you should have like a year vision. I think anything at this stage, anything more than a year, like, I mean, maybe we're going to just start writing like a 2 or a 3-year plan at Clearbank. We have never had basically more than like a 6-month plan. I mean, we have a year plan this year, but really there's so many moving pieces in that. And so I think that like having a vision on like, in terms of like the way you can vision or like manifest something, like visualizing what you would like something to look like, that's a really important like 5 to 10 year kind of like visioning experience to put yourself in your mind state there. But tactically, I think a year is actually a lot, because what you want to be doing is you want to be focusing your time on trying and testing. So you're like, I'm going to test this product. If this doesn't work, we're going to do this. If this doesn't work, we're going to do this. But like, if you try and test 20 things at once, you don't really test anything at all. And if you have a massive, you know, vision already, you actually have to tactically kind of get there. And so that's kind of the way that I would think about it. I'm pretty, you know, I create a plan at the beginning of the year, and then I'm pretty tactically driven around, you know, this is what I need to do on a week-to-week basis.
And just like a little inside baseball on, I mean, it was scary in that first couple of months, you know, for us, because no one knew what was going to happen in those first few months of the pandemic. And yeah, there was definitely like a contraction. And then very quickly, I think what is awesome about kind of Michelle's and Andrew's vision here is like, we quickly went from playing defense to playing offense. And if you like Michelle said, you are in that growing e-commerce category, and like we're probably going to be okay. It's just a matter of can you get a leg up on a competitor maybe who isn't moving as fast. So yeah, that's
yeah, I mean, look, we were in the UK and then pulled out of the UK because we were just scared. Like we were like, we have no idea what's going to happen. We like don't know what's going to happen to global credit quality. And like now when I look back at it, I'm like, man, I wish we had like totally doubled down. But like hindsight's 2020. Don't beat yourself up. I mean, we ended up launching in October. It ended up being fine.
That's a good point. I forgot about that. Gosh, it was like so long ago. Okay, so Michael, here's a fun Western Canada question here. So Michael has an oats company, GFO. It's really great product, only oats. And so he's in Saskatoon, and he's saying, hey, from a freight perspective, well, this is interesting. This is a very tactical question. So he's saying he's shipping oats all around the world, but he's in Saskatoon. So he's saying from a freight perspective, he feels like he's in the wrong physical location to scale out an e-commerce company, because Michael, it sort of sounds like you're saying you're kind of like in the middle. You're not in a shipping hub of Canada, you know, and Michelle's from out west as well. But what are your thoughts on this? Like, if you were building something out west, would you stay there? Would you be moving it to somewhere more central? Michael, I know you're on here. Do you want to clarify that at all?
Yeah, thanks, Kent. Hi, Michelle. Just to clarify a little bit more, I mean, we're currently doing distribution business. We're on shelf nationally.
Congrats.
Freight is an impactful thing for us. It's probably our most painful spend.
Yeah.
And we've done freight, I guess, exercise at looking at different locations, you know, both from a bulk moving from the mill to the packaging at our co-pack, or do it ourselves at a different location. And really, like the freight lanes are exactly what you're talking about, Kent. And like, I should have probably picked up on this when Amazon put 1.3 million square feet in Nisku, Alberta. Like, there's a reason that they went there, because we did the freight, LTL freight specifically for our distribution business, and it's literally half. So in Saskatoon, if I ship the product from Saskatoon to Edmonton and warehouse it there, and then just LTL freight it to our biggest customer, which is in Aurora, Ontario, the freight is half. So there's nuances within the freight in our
So
distribution
Michael,
business.
first of all, amazing you're from Saskatchewan. I do definitely have Saskatchewan roots, and my grandmother lives in Saskatoon. So love hearing about that. I always make it the practice of not answering questions I don't know the answer to. I don't actually know how to solve your problem. Here's what I know about freight and logistics. There is going to be a lot of things that you are going to have to specifically figure out that will not make logical sense. And so I remember, like, this is knowledge from 8 years ago when we were running Bytopia, that we would actually ship product from China into the US and then have it pick and packed in the US and shipped to Canadian addresses from the US because it was cheaper than ever landing that product in Canada. It was mind-blowing to me because what happens is the US Postal Service is going into like $8 billion of debt a year, which effectively means they're subsidizing the cost of shipping for everyone. And so I don't know I don't know exactly where you're going to need the oats and where you're going to need the co-pack and how to do this. All I know is that this is one of those problems. It's like a true optimization problem. You're 100% right. Freight is the most painful because the customer doesn't pick up your oats and is like, oh, great, I'm paying $4.50 of freight here. They just want the product at a super competitive price. But I would just, like, keep calling, keep doing research, keep figuring out, like, could it go here? Could I don't know, could I make all of the different options? Could I put, this in 8 places to co-pack? Could I put it in 1 place to co-pack? Could I put it in the US? Like, all of those, food is probably a little different because it's a regulated product. So I don't know exactly how to solve your problem. I just know that these optimization problems in e-commerce exist all of the time. And the thing that's probably going to work is not going to be intuitive and it will not make sense. And when you add up on the calculator, the amount of kilometers versus the dollars you're paying, maybe those also won't match, which will be interesting.
Yeah. I think we probably have a solution for that. My question was more related to e-commerce.
Okay.
Like, weight's our enemy, right? So, if our put up our bags here, 1 kgs. So we can't really sell one unit, it doesn't pencil, but we can sell 12 or 18 packs for the same freight.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, what more my question was, like, from an e-commerce perspective, does it make more sense to maybe have a more populated location to distribute from? I guess that was just from an e-commerce.
You're saying, like, if you were in Toronto, you would get more bulk orders out of Toronto. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Or like, would the freight component be as much of an impact when we're moving bigger volumes out to a distribution point, like an FBA kind of?
We could do, Mike, I'm just thinking now, we've got a good, so we solved a similar problem for somebody back in December with one of our partners, ShipBob. So I'm going to just leave a note here on we'll follow up with you on that to see if there's because we were able to do like an optimization where they just ended up moving their product from one warehouse to another. And it could be that is enough to, so let me follow up with you on that. And then we can
you already have.
Oh, perfect.
We're in touch with ShipBob. So if I could just say, the money's nice, but your expertise is really, and I think you guys have funded. We're probably one of your larger funded clients.
Yeah.
And frankly, that's important, yes, but it's the experience. It's the if you got 4,000 companies that you've worked with, that there's an equation. This isn't just maybe, we know that if we're working with you, we're going to succeed. We just got to check the boxes now.
Totally. No, I mean, look,
awesome.
I appreciate you saying that. Like, we're here to make founders win. And if I don't know the answer, then we will find someone else in our network that can certainly know the answer to this.
That's awesome.
And thanks for the invite, Kent. I actually looked at it this time, so appreciate that.
You're welcome. We added auto reminders since our last event, so we're learning these new superpowers every week. Shout out to Cynthia. Cynthia was pushing us to do that, so that's awesome.
Why don't I go through some of the ones in the chat?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so direct mail recommended by Canada Post. Okay, so I've had lots of challenges with direct mail. And so the biggest thing, if you're going to use direct mail, is you have to test it yourself. What we found when we used it, and again, my experience is like a little bit dated, is that they would not deliver the products to the right postal code. So like you have to actually go and you have to see if like, and I don't actually know how to do this, if you can ask someone or knock on someone's door and be like, did you get this flyer? Because what would happen with our drops is like you give them to Canada Post and then they like wouldn't go in the right place. You can also like do some tests where you can see if you're getting lift from those postal codes, like you can track in your e-commerce, like your Shopify backend, to see if like you're actually seeing increased activity from those postal codes. And generally now there's like the multi-mailers that will do like 20 direct to consumer brands. Those ones I think have worked a little bit better, but because they're cheaper and they go to wider audiences. I think if you have a children's market, which is a bit more niche, still trying to look and, you know, seeing what you can do on Google and Facebook and TikTok for new moms is might be a little bit more targeted than going there. But I mean, look, I'm not going to bash something I haven't tried in a while. So those would be the things that I would look out for if you're looking for direct mail. Solo entrepreneur, what are priorities to find complementary skills? So this one, I never quite know the answer to. I mean, lots of people will come up and they'll say, you know, it was really important for them to have a technical co-founder. I never had a technical co-founder in any of my businesses. I had basically people that were good at execution, getting shit done. They worked to the absolute bone. We're super creative with how we pitched. And we're generally pretty strong salespeople. Those have always been my co-founders. I've had Andrew as a co-founder, and I've had Ryan and Anatoly for a decade as co-founders. So I would just focus on someone that wants to work as hard as you, that largely wants to, you know, kind of treat customers the same way that you do, and is willing to go on that journey and just work their ass off. I've actually had co-founders where we had different end goals. You know what I mean? Some people wanted to make a lot of money. Some people wanted to make a lot of impact. That actually turned out just fine. It was, if there was a big difference in work ethic or a big difference in just generally how you solve problems. Like Andrew and I are like, when we get a no, we're like relentless. We're like, that's not a no. That's like, that was like, you didn't hear me, Greg. Let me keep trying. Like, I just need to knock on another door. Like we lost a deal earlier this year and we were like, we're not losing this deal. We like got on the phone with the co-founders 3 hours later. Like we had their MIT professor message them being like, I think you've chosen the wrong partner here. Like we're just kind of relentless like that. And I think that so I'm not sure, but then there's some level of complementary things that you have. But I think sometimes when people say complementary, they mean like totally out of left field different. And I don't think that I've just seen that work, but I've also, you know, only have a sample size of having a couple different co-founders in a whole career. So I know there's lots of relationships that work. But I think the most important thing that goes into choosing that is probably work ethic. So Buzz Busby, I love this. Need to hire some folks and we're figuring out the most successful ways to contribute to our brand. What do you mean by that?
Hey, Michelle. So I guess the way that I'm looking at it as a solopreneur is we're in a position where we really need to hire people. We also need to be able to hire people that are going to help us in ways that maybe I'm not very good at, right? I know what I'm good at doing. And also to get people that are as passionate about our project as I am.
And so what's your question?
Oh, it was piggybacked on Nicole's.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
About just just general like hiring tips or advice.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so the first thing, and this is not a tip, this is just reality, is that people are very bad at hiring other people. And Google's done a ton of research on this. They had more time and money to research this. And there's a great study you can read where Google, at the beginning, they did crazy hiring processes. They would like have you meet 1 million people, do a presentation. They would ask you like, why are manholes round, and all these brain teaser questions. And then they were like, okay, great, you got a job at Google. I mean, Andrew literally still had his internship looked over by like Larry and Sergey, I think, like, or like when he was applying back in the day, like they were still looking at intern hires, which is crazy. And then Google got too big and they ended up going to a regular hiring process where they asked you, you know, tell me about a time that this happened and tell me a little bit about this and something, something, something. And they then had all this data that they looked at, and they looked at the people who went through the insane hiring process, and then they went through the people who went through the regular hiring process. And can you guess which people produced better employees 5 years later? What's your guess?
Probably the other ones.
So it's even crazier.
Oh.
There was no difference.
Oh, okay.
So you know what that means? Humans are really bad at hiring people because it's such a weird, contrived experience. So what's better than hiring? References are really strong. Having people from your network that you know are good. And it's not perfect, but it definitely, like, someone that works with Kent knows Kent about 100,000 times better than I know Kent after meeting him for 30 minutes. And there's lots of people, especially in more extroverted sales and marketing roles, that will always interview incredibly well. So what do you do with a piece of information like that? Well, you just have to take some risks and you got to start hiring people. And then you have to be willing to get rid of people very, very, very quickly. Like, this is really slow. This hire slowly, fire fast. Like, that is really true. And just give people, you can give people the opportunity to be a co-founder at some point. You know what I mean? It's like, let's start working together. Let's see how things go. Let's see, how committed we are. And let's see how committed we are, and we'll go from there. But I mean, we had 3 people in our company that, Andrew and I started the company. We were the first person in the room, but we had 3 other people along the first 2 years that made such incredible contributions. We've called them co-founders now. And so you can have people work for that. But I mean, look, the biggest thing is, like, take a risk, and then also, like, don't get really caught up in, like, needs a certain background. I've just had such good luck in my career with, like, didn't go to the right school, didn't come from the right family, wants to work their ass off. Like, those people are incredible. And when people get too cute about, like, I'm looking for this profile, it's like, it doesn't work very well in early stage. Later stage, we have to do way more of that. Later stage, I'm like, I need a HR person who's dealt with stock option plans for 400 employees before. And it's such a specialized piece of knowledge. And, like, it's not like a huge leadership role. It's like a doer role. Yeah, you can hire for experience there. But your first 10, 20, even 50 employees, everyone's kind of doing 5 jobs. And so generalists who can learn, who want to work hard, are usually a lot bigger assets than people who are highly specialized.
Thank you.
But yeah, and then look, always, like, make people take the risk as well, right? Like, I think we told Kent, and maybe you were too late, but, like, my line to everyone is, like, you got to take a pay cut to work here. Like, we're not paying you. You got to bet on this company. And if you do well here, you'll get equity here, and you'll grow with us, and you'll learn with us. And I'm going to guarantee I'm going to work my ass off to make that equity really valuable. Yeah, I think that's the other important thing. Okay, CACs are rising. Oh, this is a good question. So how do I say your name? Fidel? Did I get that right?
Yes, that's right.
That's right. Okay, so question is about CACs are rising, and do you sacrifice short-term profits at break even or loss? So first of all, it depends. Like, the number one metric every single one of you should be tracking every day of every second. It should be like the thing on the top of your computer should be, what is your retention rate? And this is true no matter what business you run, no matter what sector you run. If people do not come back and buy your product again, they don't like it. You can trick someone into buying anything once. That's just, like, good marketing and good things will do that. People do not do things twice that they did not like. And so that is true NPS. That is true retention. And, sometimes, people will have business models where you guys might have products that are so amazing that they're one-time use and people use them forever. I mean, probably great for society, not a good business model, or a much tougher business model. I have one portfolio company that sells a product called the Lucky Iron Fish that puts iron in your water, and it's so much better for you than iron supplements, and it's distributed around the world into into impoverished communities as well. Really cool company, but like they, instead of selling iron supplements that you have to buy every month, they sell you a product that lasts you for 10 years. So it's not very good on the rebuild. So they have to then figure out what else they can sell to get that recurring transaction. So that's the time that you can make the risk on, you know, spending more on customer acquisition versus this. If you have a single product where you have 10% retention rate and 10% of your customers come back, and you've done all of the work around setting up email campaigns and building those communities, and you don't have the product set for people to really come back to you, then I would not recommend, you know, having negative unit economics, which means having a CAC bigger than the margin that you are making on your product. But I think it's fine to, you know, invest and grow if you have, you know, a longer, basically, effectively, it's a longer lifetime value of your customer. But people get very confused. I mean, this is where Groupon went really wrong, is they thought this LTV was going to be massive, and some of those people never returned. But you yourself, it's just like, you should know that number. You should know that number every single day. I know what our retention is at Clearbank. I know what I have to do to fix that retention at Clearbank. I care. It's the same way that like you got to know, like, I don't know, if you're on a diet, you got to know what you want to, like, your weight. Like, you just have to know that. It's so critical to doing that. The other thing is, like, don't fall into the trap of being like CACs everywhere are rising. I actually never believe that CACs everywhere are rising. I think that, like, your job is then to be more creative. So like, are CACs rising on TikTok? I don't know. It's probably a pretty new platform. Like, they're probably a little bit lower. Okay. So then, well, Facebook and Google CACs are rising. Okay. Well, then do I go to influencers, and do I just give away my product for free, and then half of them post, and then I send them thank you notes, and like that becomes free marketing? Do I use, you know, other strategies to get people's attention? And so I think, you know, I think that creativity is the other solve for rising CACs that I've seen time and time again, and really doing that. Pivoting to SaaS, how do you grow your waitlist and build up anticipation? Hire an outside company, do it yourself. So I think that kind of this you building up excitement about your company, and like you understanding the basics of digital marketing. I got this question yesterday where someone's like, well, do I just hire an agency, or do I learn digital marketing myself? And I'm like, you kind of have to know the basics, or you're going to get hosed. Like, you got to sit in ads manager for at least 10 hours, know how to create an ad set, know if your pixel's firing, know what your conversion rate is. And like, you can totally trust that to an agency at some point when you need to grow and scale, and you're running 400 ad sets at once, and they all need to turn off and on at different times. But like, you kind of have to know what you're doing. And I think that you actually understand at the early stage what your customers need. And so putting together your wait list and creating that sense of anticipation and sharing that content and getting the right people to talk about it. I mean, I think you have to do that yourself, right? Like, I'll give you another example. Like, you know, there was a bunch of famous people that tweeted about our recent Series C raise. And we obviously want to spread the news because we want way more people to know about Clearco than before. And everyone's like, oh my God, that's so great. Like, it's like Gary Vaynerchuk, and I don't know if we got, but it was like, there was a bunch of people that, you know, John Tory did one. There was a bunch of people that like tweeted this out, and they're like, oh, that's great. And I'm like, we asked for that. Like, we actually went out to people and said, can you share this? Right. And so you have to be a part of that. And people want to create relationships with founders. So the more you can create your wait list, the more you can create that relationship. If the email can come from you, I think that's important. I like what Cynthia said, having hired hundreds of people, there's no magic formula. And it really is true. And so it's not a game of beating yourself up. It's not a game. There's no question. Like, think about even yourself doing 10 hours of Zoom calls a day. 2 of those calls are going to be killer, and you're going to smash them, and everyone's going to like them. And 2 of them are going to be like, you were barely awake, and the dog walked in the room, and you didn't have your coffee yet. And you were like, I did a podcast this morning, and like, I'm trying to hold some of my sentences together. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? But you're just like, that's the same human. And so it depends literally. And so I just wouldn't spend too much time thinking about that. When considering partner with another business or individual, what are deal breakers to you? I mean, I think you just want to, I don't think I ever think about a lot of deal breakers. I mean, this is like it's kind of like business. This isn't like having kids with someone. Like if something goes wrong, you just like terminate the relationship. And maybe that's like a little cold and callous. I mean, you gotta, like, if something's giving you the heebie-jeebies, or if something doesn't feel right, like if your spidey sense going off, there's absolutely no need to do like a deal. There's lots of partnerships and great people that you can work with. And so I always recommend kind of trusting my instinct on shit like that. But I don't think I have like deal breakers per se, right? I want and I aim for very fair partnerships with people. I aim to be, you know, the least expensive client, but also the favorite client in almost all of my relationships. And so I negotiate hard on price, but I also try and give an enormous amount of upside value to people, and then really try and reward the people that continue to deliver. Like, yeah, go ahead, Kent.
Can you lean into that? So I do this all the time now as well, from something you told us, the whole, like, you give them the "I'm going to be your favorite customer" speech.
Yeah, I mean, I literally, it doesn't matter if it's your ad agency or your like who it is. I start the call by establishing my own credibility. So I talk about like who I am and why I'm building this business and why they should basically bet on me as a person. I then talk about like what we're doing as a company. And then I tell them like, look, I'm probably going to pay you the least, but I'm going to be your favorite. And this is why. And I'm going to go out of my way to do the things that matter to people. So, I mean, if you're in any level of agency business, you know what your biggest cost is? The same question we got 2 questions ago is your CAC. You're looking to find new customers. And guess what I know? I know a whole boatload of entrepreneurs that look for great agencies or great people to work with. And so I do a lot in terms of referrals when people are good. I do a lot in terms of just like, you know, being responsive and looking for things that are win-win situations for people, because that's what, and then I think you also want to be like you want to be a firm but not difficult client, right? You know, you have to, like, if you're going to ask for things, I mean, what is the worst offense I heard recently? There was actually someone at Clearbank that was like asking for a bunch of people to put documents together, and then employees were seeing that they weren't even opening up and reading them. Like, that's the worst thing ever, is like asking people to do makeshift work. And you know, people can tell when you're like, I need a piece of information, or I need this to work. And then prioritizing was important. Did I miss anything, Kent? I don't know if I covered what.
No, yeah, it's such a simple thing. And I remember when Michelle, I can't remember when you gave us this tip, but yeah, I do that now, where I'm literally negotiating almost like a commodity software tool. Yeah. And when I was on the phone with them, I just do hey, just so you know, like what's important to you here. Yeah. And how can I be your best customer? And sometimes they'll surprise you and they're like, oh, you know what? I actually get measured on like how fast you respond to my emails. So if you could just like put a little star every time I message you, if you can just like get back to me quickly, that's like a really big win for me. And I know that they're then gonna give me a better discount or something. And it's such a simple thing that I can do. It's such a simple thing to figure out how incentives are aligned. Yeah. So I just asked them. Oh, Michelle, sorry, you missed one up here, which is actually, I'd love for you to talk about your, so you had one here from Carrie here, kind of like looking at kind of business efficiencies from a high level. And I'd love for you to talk about last year when you went on this, like, I'm just gonna, look, we like to talk real on this team. Michelle went on a tirade of why is this a rule? And is this a dumb rule? And can we break this rule? So, and that to me sort of answers this, like, you basically looked at the whole company and you were looking for efficiencies and like, and just how did you apply this, like, oh yeah, I called it the assault on dumb rules. Like, I just like lost my mind. Dumb rules or something like that. Yeah, talk about dumb rules. Yeah, no, I went on my assault on dumb rules. Like, organizations, like, people create process sometimes for absolutely no reason, or they create process because they're weak at their jobs and they want, like, all sorts of dumb things happen for no good reason. And so, like, we were doing things like, oh my God, it was so stupid. Someone would be like, we can't do any cannabis companies. And I was like, no, that's actually not the rule. We can't do companies that sell like physical weed cannabis, but like bongs and accessories and like paper, like, oh, there's this whole peripheral industry. And it's like, well, people just didn't understand the rule, right? Or like, oh my God, what was the other? We had so many bad ones. It was like I was just discovering. And so first of all, you have to like bring that out of your organization, is you have to be like, what are people spending their time on? I mean, last week, someone spent
a lawyer spent 2.5 hours on a press release on something that I thought was very, very low risk. So what do you look for efficiencies? I mean, you aim to go very fast. And like, this is one of our values at Clearbank is like, and people will respond and will be like, speed, speed, speed. It's like, speed is important because it is your only competitive advantage as a startup. So just like, think about that again, and like really let that digest. If speed, because every big company can do what you're doing better. And that's like, you really have to let that reality sink in. Big companies have more capital. They have more money to hire better people. They have relationships with governments and large organizations. They should be able to do everything better, but big companies lack the ability to do anything fast. And so then if you just boil it down to just that, you're like, okay, so I really have to be fast. And some people got a little bit confused at this at Clearbank because fast is not sloppy. Those are very different things. Fast is, if we can solve this problem today, if we can be upfront with each other, if we can use radical candor and get through this, then we will solve this problem today and not tomorrow.
And I think what's really key there is like, because I know a lot of you are, you know, here's Michele, like we grew so fast, and that's why we had all these crazy rules that were coming up. But we've applied that even on our really small angel team, where we actually have this meeting where we kind of go through like, do we have any, like, we call them retrospectives, whatever you want to call them, but you do them frequently enough where, like, even one of the questions before, even if it's just you and your husband working on this thing, it's like, there's never a time to not do what Michele just said. It's like, you're never too small to be like, because you probably have a rule already that's limiting you that you don't even know is a rule until you actually spend the time to talk about it. And just like, it doesn't just apply to big companies. This is something that like you can definitely do, even if it's just you or just the two of you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And actually, so there's another question that wasn't in the chat here around talking about speed. There was 2 questions around, like, on the e-commerce front, new products versus like, how often, when should you be launching new products versus really leaning in and focusing on this existing line, you know, that you've got. Kind of ties into even what Michael was asking about, like, you've got this big 1 kilogram thing. Should you be doing sample packs? Like, should you be doing all these small things? So Michele, in your mind, like when you're thinking of like speed when it comes to an e-commerce company, you've talked about making sure you're running a bunch of different ads, trying different channels, testing. What about when it comes to products? How should we do, like, how do you integrate speed into launching new products?
Yeah, I mean, you test and you try so many things, right? You're prototyping, you're constantly like putting things out there, you're getting pre-orders on stuff, you're working with your manufacturers to make something better and better, like the look and the way, the hand feel of a product, like all of that makes a huge difference in terms of getting something that really can get to the level where people are like, yes, this is like amazing. And so it's just working. And a lot of manufacturers will want you to go slow, right? Because they don't want to retool and they don't want to, change things. But, launching, and I love just the Kickstarter model of trying to get new things out there and seeing before you make huge inventory purchases and before you buy a ton of stuff, what really makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Hey, so there's some fun little rapid fire ones here. So we've got 8 minutes. So if you have any other quick questions, toss them in the chat here. I've got a few here. So Michele, people want to know, what's the best book you've read in the last, or audio book you've read in the last, call it a month here? And what's the one, other than that, what's the one you recommend founders to read the most? So most recent one, and then the timeless one that you recommend the most.
Okay, so recent is kind of a weird bias. I'm reading Hard Things About Hard Things right now, and I just finished the $1 Trillion Coach one, which is the Bill Campbell book. They're kind of like, I think Hard Things About Hard Things is better because he talks about how like messy it really is to build a business. Versus $1 Trillion Coach, I found it was like a little bit more kind of like hopey changey in terms of that. I'll give you a set of books that I really like. So. Best book on negotiation is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I think it's mandatory reading. I try and reread that book once a year because I think it's that good. I think that the best book on mindset I've ever read is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And that guy is like a monster and a machine. And I also like laughed out loud so many times in that book because he's a crazy person, but he just gave me so much inspiration for like not giving up. David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. Best book on selling, I think this is mandatory for every entrepreneur to read, is Influence by Robert Cialdini. He's one of the world's most famous social psychologists. Book's really easy to read, but it actually goes into the techniques that the brain uses when we buy something, like scarcity and like foot in the door technique. Like there's so many, they are repeated in every industry in every way. And you can use that to upsell. I mean, that's really like social proof. There's so many things that that's such a good book to read. And then I spend a lot of time trying to read the books of other founders. And ideally you want the books of other founders after they don't care about their PR story anymore. And so, because if they care about their PR story, the book's has a little bit too much gloss in it and you're not really getting the real goods.
That's
like
the point. Yeah. What's your favorite one that's not the PR gloss one?
Oh, like I think the Steve Jobs book, the Walter Isaacson, that doesn't have a lot of gloss because he's at the end of his life and he didn't care that he was going to be perceived as an asshole. Little Black Stretchy Pants by Chip Wilson and how he built Lululemon. I know that not everyone loves Chip, and sometimes he could be certainly very unsavory, but man, that book, he did such a bad private equity deal and he's so upfront with it. And I was like, did this guy have no one to call? Like, I'm even reading this book, I'm like cringing for him. I was like, don't do it, Chip. But that's a lot of honesty in a book. And he talks about the kind of ups and downs going there. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, look, the story of how you build McDonald's or Apple, it's all the same as how you build an e-commerce store. Like all of these things, the entrepreneurial journey is very similar. And so that just gets me very motivated to keep growing and to remind myself that this is a very normal part of the journey.
Love it. So hey, we've got Perry and Carrie have two quick ones here. Let's see if we can sneak them in here. Michelle, if you can see the chat here. So you're saying let's test. So we're saying to test things with your manufacturers. Michelle, if this was your e-commerce company, you're making less than 500K and you have an idea to test something with your manufacturer, but it's going to cost you $15,000 to test it. So that's what we call it, a tenth of your, or 15% of your, would you still run that physical test to push a new product out the door? Like serious money.
Can you get a prototype, Perry?
Actually, that's the problem. No, because our products are natural health supplements.
Yeah.
And the contract manufacturer makes them based on our NPN or license.
I see.
We have, so it's a specific formula.
I see.
Usually the MOQs are really high, like at least a few thousand bottles of, if it's a pill or,
Yeah, totally.
They don't make like, I don't know, 100 of these.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would try and test and see if you can do like some pre-sales or pre-orders, right? To say like, this is the supplement we're coming out. This is, whatever, make it a discount. The first 500 customers get it at half price, like join the wait list now and see if you can build up some demand before you actually have to make the $15,000 investment. Like, look, I think that $15,000 to invest, if you're doing $500,000 in sales, that's probably like an okay number that you should feel comfortable with. But I would do all of the things to actually see, because what would be perfect is if you could get $15,000 in pre-sales, pay for the MOQs, put the product out, and then get the feedback.
Yeah.
And there's certainly like a way to do that now on the internet.
So just sort of piggybacking on that thought then, Michelle. So thinking of timeline, because I think that's such a good idea of like, you're right. And so few e-commerce founders do this where you don't need to go to Kickstarter. Just go on your Shopify, put up a product at half price. Don't put any inventory in, pre-sell this stuff. But how far in advance, Michelle, do you see that window where you'd go from, you would put this pre-order up in June. When would you be looking to, actually get that product out the door? How much of a window do you think you have from when you start that pre-sale to when it gets out to the founder? Like if you had to put a timeline to it.
How much time for I don't know.
It's a hard, yeah.
Make it like 6 weeks. I mean, people wait 2 months. They'll get a little irritated, but you can push it a little
Yeah,
bit.
but I think if you wait too long after that, people are going to forget they paid. Then they're going to look at their credit card and be like, "What is this?" And they're going to start charging you.
Yeah. I think you kind of have 6 weeks. Actually, I think Kent is right because you have to be thinking about the credit card cycle.
Cool. Well, Michelle, we have 1 minute here.
Okay.
crystal ball, 5 years, what do you think, what is Clearco going to look like in 5 years?
Oh man, I hope we're backing like millions of founders. I firmly believe that the people that have had the money always decided which projects got built. So if you were one of the people with the ideas, which all of us on this call are, if you knew the people with the money and those people used to be the kings, your roads got built and your projects got built. And it's actually still that way today. And so I don't think any founder goes into building a business to fundraise. That's not like, I can't wait to fundraise. I can't wait to pitch. You're like, no, I can't wait to build my product. I can't wait to help my customers. I can't wait to figure out how to market this. Like, that's why you do this. You certainly don't start a business to fundraise. And you certainly don't start a business to be like, I can't wait to reconcile my banking and choose my credit card and deal with all the financial stuff that goes into build business. And so, at Clearbank, if we can just make that a little bit easier, I think that's got a real chance of changing the lives of founders and also allowing people that probably never would have taken the risk or were never part of those right circles to be able to build incredible companies. And maybe the last thing that I would say is I still think if you want to make a difference in your career, being a founder is one of the best ways to do this, because you get to build the world you want to live in. And I think in a way more effective way than many other professions. And I compare like entrepreneurship to politics a lot. I mean, I look at the trillions of dollars now governments have invested in climate change, and like what made a difference? It was like the entrepreneur that built cars and trucks that people wanted to drive. And it was the Nest thermostat, believe it or not, in the US that made a meaningful difference on greenhouse gases. And so go build it. Like it is there. People want. And today, more than ever, people want to support entrepreneurs. They want to understand your story, and they care about what's in their products and how it's made. And so I think that is an incredible opportunity in this moment to build. And then on top of that, we've just had this, incredible surge of e-commerce companies. Like, seems pretty good to me.
On that note, we're going to leave it there. Michele, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, we'll do this. We'll have to do this again at some point. Thank you for all your answers here, and thank you everybody for coming and for being on the ClearAngel team. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very
Thank
interesting.
you guys.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Talk soon.